Welcome to Fast Talk Laboratories, your source for the science of endurance performance.
So today we're going to talk to you about stretching. We're actually going to take you through a routine that I used to do all the time when I had a little more time on my hands. Our head coach Ryan Kohler is going to demonstrate these stretches to you. So something just to be aware of, Ryan's going to show you the motions. So he's going to go into the stretch and then come out. I actually really like to hold these stretches. So 90 seconds to 2 minutes is a great length to hold the stretch so that muscle relaxes and opens up a little bit. Now, the research is actually a little controversial on whether stretching is beneficial for endurance athletes. A lot of that research has looked at its benefits for recovery, and that really hasn't panned out. And that, I believe, that's not really why we're trying to do it. I do think that stretching is beneficial. What we're trying to do is get muscles to their optimal length. So when you are going through any sort of range of motion, there's a certain length where the muscle can generate the most force. If it's too long, it can't generate as much force. If it's too short, it also can't generate enough force. So you want to get those muscles to that optimal length. Another thing to be aware of is if the muscle is too long or too short, you can lose stability, or it's not going to be able to get through that full range of motion, and that can lead to injury. So that's one of the big reasons I like to stretch. It's get the muscle to a good length so that you're avoiding injury and you can get the optimal force generation. So there's a benefit to stretching, but we don't want to become hyperflexible. As an endurance athlete, you're not trying to become a gymnast here. You're just trying to make those muscles function optimally, which doesn't mean you have to do the splits. So with that, let's take a look at some of these stretches. So this stretch is your basic quad stretch. This is a great exercise for runners and cyclists who can get pretty tight in the quads. When I stretch, it's actually an exercise I like to hold for a long time. If I can, I'm going to hold it for 5 or even longer minutes and really try to get that muscle to release. So important thing to note here, and you're not quite seeing this in Ryan because he did admit that he's a little inflexible in the quads, but your quads actually cross 2 joints. So the insertion points are above your hip joint and below your knee joint. So you want to take advantage of both of those joints. It looks here like Ryan is only bending at the knee. That's not really going to quite do it. And if you bend too much at the knee, that could actually lead to injury. So when I do it, I prefer to mostly bend at the knee, but then pull that leg back so I'm extending the hip at the hip joint to get that full stretch to the quad. Now, another thing that Ryan's demonstrating right here is be careful about keeping that knee and leg in line with the body. So you don't want to pull the leg up away from the body or pull it down when you're doing this stretch. You want to keep it straight or you can injure yourself. So here Ryan's going to demonstrate just a good basic hip flexor stretch. For cyclists, if I could only give them 3 stretches, this would be one of them, because cyclists get tight in the hip flexors. That could lead to injury, that could lead to knee issues. So keeping those hip flexors flexible, preventing them from getting too tight, is really critical for us. So if you look at Ryan here, he's actually got pretty good balance. He's just doing it in the middle of the floor. I personally like to put a chair beside me, or I'll take the foam roller, stand it up, and rest my arm on it, just so I can really focus on the stretch and not have to worry about keeping my balance. But pretty impressive with Ryan here. Now, what you're trying to do is stretch the hip flexor. That's just this small muscle that crosses your hip joint. So this is where you should feel it. So think about pushing the buttocks or that hip joint forward as you're doing this stretch. So here Ryan has demonstrated the wrong way to do that. What he's not doing is getting that pelvic rotation that you need. Essentially all he's doing is leaning forward. So he's not feeling anything in here. That's really what you want to feel. So again, push those buttocks forward, get that pelvic tilt, and you want to feel it right here. Finally, if you are really flexible in the hip flexors and you're just not feeling that stretch anymore, Ryan's demonstrated a way to get a little deeper into it. Put that foam roller underneath your ankle. So this stretch is commonly called the pigeon stretch. I also think this is a great one for runners and cyclists because we tend to get very tight in the hips. And I think this is a great stretch for opening those hips. I particularly like it after a good, long, hard bike ride. It just feels really good sinking into this stretch. So Ryan's demonstrated the proper form here. If you're doing it right, you're going to feel that stretch through kind of the side of your hip and the side of your leg. But be very careful here. If you have a bad back or any sort of back problem, and this is feeling a little nervy, don't do this. It means you're aggravating your back. On that same note, look at the way Ryan's holding his back. You want a neutral position here. So you don't want to be hunching over as you're doing it. And I don't really want to tell my athletes to arch backwards a lot. Just keep that neutral back and focus on sinking into the leg. So this is a great stretch for opening up the hips, which is particularly important for cyclists and runners because we can get really tight in the hips. If you're doing this right, you're going to feel the stretch through the side of your hip and the side of your leg. If you watch Ryan here, he's starting with good form. Notice he's keeping his back neutral. Really the only thing that's moving is his leg. If you now watch, Ryan's actually going to take this a little too far in my opinion. He's starting to rotate the body, twist the back. He's rotating the other leg. He's bringing his whole body into it, and I don't think that's the way you should do the stretch. It should just be far enough, keep the back neutral, bring the leg around, feel that stretch to the hip on the side of your leg, but don't rotate. So any of you do yoga, you know this next pose as child's pose. This is the feel-good stretch. I love to do this at the end of my stretch routine. It's just a nice way to finish out and feel pretty good after your stretch routine. So the important thing with this is, again, keeping that back neutral. You don't want to overarch, you don't want to overextend. If this is in any way feeling nervy, you're doing it wrong and stop. Ryan now is demonstrating a variation on this where he's going side to side. That's just a good way to pull the whole back, get a nice stretch through all sides of your back into this pose. Again, just a great way to finish out a stretch routine. So Ryan's now going to demonstrate a good neck stretch. This is a great exercise for a cyclist because we're always down in that hunched down position with our necks up. Our necks get very stiff. So this is just a good one to open and loosen them up. Now the important thing with this is not to go too far and injure your neck. So you just want to go until you feel a slight stretch and then hold it. You could also go side to side, but same sort of thing. Just go until you feel a slight stretch and then hold it. So continuing with the neck stretches, Ryan's now going to demonstrate stretching the sides of your neck. So again, this is one where you want to go just far enough to feel that stretch. You don't want to go too far. Now notice he's bringing his arm into that motion. That helps extend the stretch. So it's not just the neck, but goes down through that upper back. Ryan's doing this by holding his hand. I actually like to do this by kneeling on the ground, putting my hand underneath my glute, and then lightly grabbing my head with my hand and pulling the head to the side. Ryan's demonstrated here a good basic calf stretch, another one that can be really important for endurance athletes like runners and cyclists who can get really tight in the calves. So if you're doing this right, you're going to feel obviously that stretch to the calf. So Ryan is doing this straight-legged. Now you can't really see this, but it's very important when you're doing this that you keep that back neutral. You don't want to arch it or extend it. Just keep it neutral and have that whole stretch in the calf. If you have pretty flexible calves and you feel like you need to get a little deeper, it can help to put something like a foam block underneath your toes just to get a little further into that stretch. This stretch, also a very important one for endurance athletes, is your basic hamstring stretch. This is another one that if you have the time, holding this for an extended period of time, 5+ minutes, can be really beneficial because you just feel that muscle loosen. Now, there are many ways to do a hamstring stretch. This is my favorite because when you're doing hamstrings, you run that risk of injuring your back if you're doing it wrong. This is one where it's very easy to get your back into a bad position. When you're lying on the ground and putting your leg up against the wall. Notice you're looking at Ryan here, back's in that nice neutral position. And you might, as you're doing it, just try to slip a hand underneath your back. If you can put your whole hand underneath, that means that you're extending too much. Try to get that back neutral. You should just be able to get your fingers in there a little bit. Now, there's 3 positions that Ryan's going to demonstrate here. This is basically addressing how flexible are you. I'll admit, I just do this first one with the bent knee. It's safe, it doesn't injure your back. And that's all you need to do if you don't have the best flexibility. You don't have to try to have that straight leg. But if you are more flexible, then what you do is move closer to the wall and try to keep that leg straight. And this last one, where I'm sure Ryan's hurting a little bit, you can see he's right up against the wall with that straight leg. Only do that if you truly have the flexibility for that. This shouldn't be a stretch that's really hurting. You should just feel a slight stretch. So that was some of my favorite stretches. That's just a good routine that takes you about 15 minutes that I think is going to benefit any sort of endurance athlete. There's certainly more you could do, but this is a great starting point. And if you have 15 minutes, this is what I'd recommend you do multiple times a week.